Okay, students, so in the previous video, we added a score and HP variable to our player character as integers. But we primarily kept track of them when we changed them from damage and picking stuff up by using the print screen to console command. In this video, we're going to look at how to make an official heads-up display to show our health and our score directly on the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create, I'm actually going to make a folder here, a new folder. I'm going to call it HUD or HUD for heads up display. And in this folder, I'm going to create a user interface widget blueprint. And I'm going to call this third person HUD. And you could call it first person HUD. If you have a first person character, you could call it my HUD, whatever. But so this is our widget blueprint. And I'm going to double click on it to open the widget blueprint editor, which looks like this. And you can see it somewhat bears a resemblance to the blueprint editor, but basically this is our screen that we are creating the HUD for. And then we have some options here on the left, and we have a timeline here at the bottom and a details panel on the right. So basically anything we drag in goes here in the screen. And you can see we have a bunch of options here, including these common ones like borders and buttons, images, and stuff. We're going to start pretty simple, and I'm going to just drag in a text object. Now, when looking at this, you have this funky like flower in the upper left, and this is your anchor. And it basically tells you what this widget, which in this instance the text block, is anchored to. And you use this to make sure that the text stays on the screen if it's being played in a different size, like a different screen size, and that way it is pinned to a certain corner. But I'm going to start with the upper left for now. I'm going to drag my little text block over here, and actually I'm going to switch it to the lower left. Now that I think about it, I'm going to open my anchor here, and you can like change it by hand. And if you scroll down, there's lots of different like justify tools, so you can line stuff up. I'm actually going to grab this guy and switch him to the bottom left, and because this is going to be for my health. And you can see here I have a bunch of options. By default, there is only the Unreal font, which is Roboto. And I'm going to write health and a colon and hit enter here. And I can do stuff like change the text size. So maybe I make it like 36 and hit enter. And you can see it gets bigger, and I can resize my box and a bunch of different stuff here. And I can, turn off bold, and you can turn on like shadows and a whole bunch of other stuff behind it. If you want to have a specific font, you can drag that font into the editor just like anything else. And you can even copy fonts that are already on your computer by going to the Windows/fonts folder. I am going to grab a font that I have downloaded. It is a TTF file here. I have this 8-bit Wonder font. I'm going to drag it into the box, and Unreal is going to say, hey, do you want us to create a font with this? I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead. And it gives me some font options. And now if I go back here in my HUD, I can change from Roboto to 8-bit Wonder, and I get a nice sort of health thing here. But it looks like perhaps there is not a colon in this font, which is kind of a bummer. But let's try again. Colon. Let's see if I drag this out. Basic Latin A. So it looks like that is not, there's not a colon there, but we'll just leave it as health. Or maybe I can put a dash. Nope. Health it is. And this is going to be my first, and then I'm going to drag out a second health bar here, and I'm even going to rename this. Currently in the upper right, it's called text block 1. I'm going to call it health text. And I'm going to drag out another one. And again, switch it to 8-bit Wonder just because I have it and I like it. We'll make it 36 font again. And I'm going to make this text, instead of saying text block, I'm going to make it say like 100. And it doesn't actually matter what you make it say because we're going to overwrite this, but it's useful to put the text in there so that you can like know how big stuff will be. And I'm also going to move my anchor to the bottom here as well. And perhaps it would be better to pick a font that actually had a colon or whatever, but this will work. And maybe I'll even make the text red because that would be cool here. So we'll do a red text bar there. And for the upper right, I'm going to also drag out a text. Same deal. I'm going to call this one score. And change my size because I want it to be nice and big. I'm going to call this one score text. And this one down here that I made, I'm going to call this one health number. This isn't super important, but it's useful just to keep things clean. My score, I'm also going to move my anchor to the right side so that it always stays a certain distance away from the right corner. And I can probably even just right-click on this and duplicate it. And then that way, for this one, I can make my score here be 0. So let's change the score. We'll make it a 0. And perhaps even I want it to be right justified in my little box here. So that looks pretty good. And maybe I'll make the score blue, because why not? We'll play around with it. And we could even, you know, turn on a little shadow color or something. We'll play around. But this looks pretty good. Now, what you have to do to make these numbers actually mean something is we have to create what's called a binding. So up here, we want to make sure that we are in the content text portion, and we're going to instead create a binding. And when we do that, it's going to move us to a new page here. It's created like our own little event, our own little thing that we can call, our own little function, excuse me, on a separate page. And this is the function for get health number. And so what it's going to do is it wants to get health number text, and then it's going to return a value. And if we look here, we can see this value is a text. So what we want to do is we're going to drag off here. And the first thing I want to do actually is we're going to get the player controller, right? Because this is our player. And this, we want to look for player index 0, because that's us. And it's going to return a value. It's going to let us look for the value, and I'm going to look for health. Well, actually, first we are going to cast to player, to third person. Let's try it off here. Cast to third person character. Okay, and this is our guy here. We're going to say connect, make sure that we are getting the first player. And now that we have cast, just like when we were changing variables, because we've cast the third person character, we can get at those variables. So I can get health. So health is here is an integer, which does not match string, but if I drag it to it, Unreal is looking out for me, and it will convert the health string to an integer and return the value. And you want to make sure this is connected here, and compile. And third person character is not to create to character controller. I think I need get player character. That's what we needed, not controller. That should work just fine. Compile. There we go. Right, we're finding the actual character because third person character inherits from character, not controller. Sorry about that mistake. And if we come back here into our HUD, so I click here to get back into my HUD, hopefully. Oh, designer. There we go. So at the upper right here, I switch from designer back from graph. I'm going to click on score, and I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure I'm in the text portion, and we're going to create a new binding here to make a new function. and it's where we get the score. Same idea, we are going to cast to third person character, and we are going to get player character and connect it. And then what we need here is to get score. And the score, notice this time, still a text. We're going to drag it in there, and it will convert once again for us. So now when we compile and everything is good, these numbers now draw from our actual user. So our last step is to then make it so that we can see this HUD in the game. So I'm going to edit my third person character, which is here. And we're going to look for our event begin play. And right now we have this string that is pasting the score or the HP in our window. We're going to get rid of that guy now. And instead we are going to drag off and use create widget. And we have to choose. And when we choose, you should only really see one option that makes sense here, which is the HUD we just made. We're going to create the third person HUD. And then we're going to drag off of that and type add to viewport and connect this value here to self. So we are creating a third person HUD and we are adding it to the viewport. And we can also connect our owning player here. We can get player controller and put that on here. And we can compile this. And now if I hit play, you will notice in the lower left here, I have health. In the upper right, I have score. And as I pick up coins, that number will change. And as I do things that hurt me, the number will change in the lower left as it keeps track of the different bits of my health. Now, one last thing we can do here, this is like the world's simplest HUD, but we can add many more things to this. One thing you could have here is a progress bar. So if you wanted to have a progress bar for your health instead of the actual health here, and you can layer things potentially and do all sorts of stuff. You know, we can change the order of these things in the hierarchy. I could move it behind. But I'm just going to leave this on top for now. So a progress bar, we look here, it has a %. And you can see here I can drag it up and drag it down. And we can bind this to a variable as well. Now, when you're doing a progress bar, notice that the % here, max is 1 and min is 0. So we have to convert our health into into a percentage of 1. So I'm going to create a new binding. And we're going to do the same thing we did previously, which is cast a third person character. And we're going to get player character. And we're going to get health. And because our health is 100 and we want it to be a percentage out of 1, what we will do here is we are going to type a slash to have divide. And we're going to divide by 100. And you will notice here our return value this time is a float. So if we connect from here to here, it should convert. It'll say, hey, convert integer to float for us. So we have this quick little convert pin. And it'll now take our health as a percentage out of the whole bar. And I can have in our HUD multiple things that are showing the same thing. It's okay that I have a health number and a health bar. That is super okay. And as we hit play here, you will see I now have a health bar. And as I do things that hurt me, it should move along the bar. Here it just did not. It emptied our whole bar. So let's double check and see what's wrong there. Let's look at that binding. Get %. Get %. Get health. Divide health by 100. Turn it into a float. perhaps need to turn it into a float beforehand. So let's turn to float right here, integer, and then now we need to divide by 100. Yes, because otherwise what was happening is it was becoming 80 over 100, which is 0.8, but as an integer, we would round that down to 0. So make sure you convert to float so we can have decimal points beforehand. And let's get hurt over here. Perfect. So we can now see my health chunking on our HUD. You can add lots of different stuff here, and it doesn't have to be score. You could have it keep track of how many keys that you've collected and any number of things. It's possible to have images and bind the number of images to a variable as long as it's an integer. You could have a hidden key symbol that you put up here that is off, set to 0, and then it turns on as you get a key with a Boolean, with some of the variables we already have. So there's lots of different stuff you can do here to drag stuff out and to make it be prettier. There's also the pre-made packs, and those come with even instructions on how to use those health bar sliders and stuff like that.